Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, I will be discussing my August wrap-up. All of the books that I managed to finish and not finish in the month of August. So August was a very interesting month. I had 3 DNFs, which probably shouldn't surprise a lot of people. I am in the stage of my life where if I'm not actively enjoying a book, I'm not going to push through it. So I do have 3 DNFs, but that's a big but, y'all. I overall had a very stellar reading month. I had 3 5-star new favorites. I had a ton of excellent rereads. And overall, just in general, most of my books that I finished, I really enjoyed. Gave at least 4.5 stars to. Had a couple of duds here and there, but overall, August was a fantastic month. I had 3 DNFs. I finished 13 books, which is pretty good. But yeah, overall, August, even despite the 3 DNFs and a couple of disappointments, very good month. Not the best. Like, I think, what was it, June or July? I just had like a fantastic month. But August was very good. And yeah, I'm going to talk about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So let's go ahead and start with those pesky DNFs, get those out of the way. I've got a couple of them which I am going to be unhauling. One of them is going to be Not for Nothing by Stephen Graham Jones. And Stephen Graham Jones, like I've mentioned, he is one of my favorite authors, definitely one of my favorite horror authors, but definitely early on in his career, he had a lot of very experimental books, and this is one of them. This is kind of his detective noir book, but it's written in second person, which if you don't know what second person means, I'll just read it to you. She'll be waiting for you when you walk back from the water station next door. And of course, you'll have the tip of your thumb in your mouth. We'll only realize it after you've stopped walking, when you're standing there like some animated character trying to blow his flattened hand back up. All that's left to do then is to waggle your fingers before your face. So you get the idea. Like, you're basically the narrator is suggesting like you're the character. You. Which is very different than like, I did this, I did that, or he did this, she did that. It's just a very, like, and in this book, and I'm not saying that's always a bad thing, because there's a book in August that I read that had second person that I actually gave 5 stars to. So I think it can be done well. In this book, I just don't think it added a lot to the story. Like, it could have been decent, maybe, like if it was just written in third person or even first person, but I just don't think the second person really added that much to the story. I know a lot of people, like Stephen Graham Jones fanatics, read this book and they enjoy it, but for me, it just didn't work, and I DNF'd it fairly early. Like, I gave it like maybe 100 pages. It's like a 300-page book. Like, it just wasn't doing it for me, and I didn't want to push through it, so I DNF'd it. Stephen Graham Jones is definitely a hit-or-miss author. He has some of my all-time favorite horror books, but he had some duds. And this next book I was really excited for because my wife Stacy read it and enjoyed it for the most part. It's kind of a mix of like sci-fi, thriller, apocalypse. Like, it's got kind of a lot of things going for it, but it just did not work for me. And that would be Aurora by David Kip? I don't know. But anyway, this one had a lot of potential because it's kind of like something with the sun, like something happens with the sun that makes like all technology in the world just suddenly stops working. And it's a really cool premise of like what the world would actually look like. But I think this book was just kind of like so narrowly focused on like a couple of people that I didn't get enough details on like the world in general. And normally I'm in it for the characters, but these characters I just didn't really enjoy that much. So that's kind of where I'm at a crossroads with this book. Like, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna kind of avoid kind of like the world at large, which is kind of what I was more interested in, you gotta have good characters. And these characters, for whatever reason, just didn't do it for me. So one of them in particular I found really annoying, and I just hated when we got to their chapter. And then just the rest of them, I just didn't care. So I didn't want to push through it, so I DNF'd it. Another book that I DNF'd, which has become very popular. This author is very popular, and I did not enjoy his other book, which is super popular. So many people love that book. There is kind of a specific reason why I don't like that book. But anyway, I digress. I'm talking about My Friends by Frederick Bachman. This book, it might just be easier to talk about my experience with them. So I read Beartown, but before I read the book, or even like as I was starting the book, I got spoiled for kind of what the book was. And I'm not going to say it here because I think that book could have been better if I didn't know what was going on. I was watching a particular booktuber, I won't say who it was, but they just flat out spoiled like what the book was about. And I think it would have been more impactful if I didn't know that was coming. So Beartown for me just didn't work for me. I gave it 2, maybe 2.5 stars. It just didn't work. So jumping into this book, a lot of people told me that I might like this book, and I've heard a lot of great things about this book and the author in general. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe Beartown, kind of a one-time thing. Maybe his other books will be better. But this book, y'all, I just... How many times did I roll my eyes reading this book? This book is just so pretentious. It was just like every time this author wrote a sentence, he was trying to like expound on life and be very profound. And I just hated it. I hated the way that he wrote this book. And the characters were all just annoying. I just couldn't stand this book. I stomached 50 pages of this, and I just couldn't take it. So I don't think Frederick Bachman is going to be for me. Maybe one day in the distant future, I will try another one of his, because I've heard Anxious People is like a good starting point for him. Like a lot of people say that's a really good one. But man, I have just not had good luck with Frederick Bachman. So sadly, I DNF'd My Friends. All right, so we got the pesky DNFs out of the way. Now we're going to start from the bottom, work our way up to the best of the month, and definitely the worst book that I read in the month of August was That's Not My Name by Megan Laley. They call me Stacy. That's not my name. That's not my name. And the whole time I was like excited for this book, I had that song in my head. But luckily, or not, why did I say that? But unluckily, this book freaking sucked. And this book has an interesting premise. Although I probably wouldn't have picked it up if I knew it was a YA thriller. So if you're interested in this book, definitely know that it's a young adult thriller, which isn't necessarily inherently a bad thing, but I didn't love it. Not because of that, but like I probably wouldn't have picked it up otherwise. Anyway, this has a very interesting premise where you've got this young teenage girl who has amnesia, and the cops find her on the side of the road. She doesn't remember who she is, what she's doing. She doesn't remember anything. And then this guy claiming to be her father shows up at the police station, and he eventually compiles all of the paperwork that kind of proves that she's his daughter. So she has to go off with him, but she's kind of suspecting like, I don't remember anything. Like this seems weird. So like all of that was very interesting from the start, because it's a pretty interesting premise. But then you actually get a dual POV. You get a second POV where you get this young teenage boy, and like a while ago, his girlfriend goes missing, and kind of the whole town kind of blames him because he was the last person to see her alive. So he's dealing with that. And the whole book, you're kind of led to believe like, oh, possibly his missing girlfriend and this girl with amnesia are the same person. So you're kind of like going back and forth of like how that's possible. And overall, I really didn't like his POV because a lot of it was kind of typical like YA drama, and I didn't really like him as a character. But what kept me going was like the mystery of like who this girl is, what's going on. Like it at least kept me interested until the very end. But then you get to the end and you realize what's going on, and it's one of those books that like you think about it more often, or like you think about it more and more, and it just gets stupider the more you think about it. And I can't go into spoilers why, because it all kind of hinges on the end. And there's one point in particular that I'm like, it's a glaring plot hole in this book, and I'm like, how did anybody like not pick up on that right away? I'm just like, but yeah, this book sucked. I do not recommend it, but it is a fast-paced young adult thriller, so if you're into that, maybe you'll like it more than me. I did not. I gave this book 2 stars. One of the worst books I've read all year. Next book I have to talk about is The Darkness. I forget the author. Maybe I think it's like Ragnar something. It's like an Icelandic thriller, which I haven't really had that much luck with in the past, but Josephina, who I'll link down her channel below, but she's also one of my Patreon members, and she actually won the Patreon wheel spin, and this was her pick, so I read it. I didn't hate this book, but I did give it 3 stars. A lot of that is because of the very ending of this book. The very ending of this book is very polarizing. I did not love the ending, but I was enjoying most of the book. It's an interesting one because you're following kind of like a, not elderly, but like an older woman in like her 60s, and she's getting ready to retire as an investigator, but she kind of learns that like her boss like wants her to retire early with benefits, but she wanted to kind of like continue on at least until the end of the year. So she kind of scrambles to like, oh, well, I at least want to follow up on this one thing that's been bothering me, this one case that's really been in her mind. So she wants to do that, and she gets involved, and like crazy stuff happens. And it was pretty good. I thought she was a really good character, but like I said, the ending I did not like the ending. And it sucks too, because like it's a series, like it's the first book in a series, but the way that the book ends makes me not want to continue the series. I've heard interesting things, but yeah, it was a quick read. It was like less than 6 hours on audio. So it was a very fast paced, easy to get into, pretty tense at times. But overall, just the ending really kind of sucked the joy out of it. Josephina loved the ending. She loved this book, but I disagree. Yeah, this book was good, but I settled on 3 stars. Next book I have to talk about is Forget Me Not by Stacey Willingham. This book is a new release thriller. She wrote one of my all-time favorite thriller debuts, Flicker in the Dark, but that like her debut novel was her best, and she's kind of been going downhill from there. Her last book last year, Only If You're Lucky, I didn't really love that much, and sadly, this book, while I liked it a bit more than her previous one, I still didn't love it, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. Good character work as always, but this one was just a lot less interesting than her first 2 books. Like Flicker in the Dark was fantastic, and then the one she wrote after that, which I can't remember what it's called, but that one was still great. Only If You're Lucky was not, I didn't really like the premise or the characters. That one was just fine. It was 3.5 stars. This one, yeah, I didn't love the ending, and it just took a long time to get anything going. And yeah, it just wasn't a very satisfying book. And which makes me wonder, like, is this author even worth reading anymore? Because Flicker in the Dark was so great, but everything after that just has not been as good. So maybe a couple more, and then after that, if it's not like what she's capable of, at least in my opinion, I might just stop reading her. But this one was fine. Forget Me Not. Ironic title, though, because I definitely will be forgetting this novel very soon. All right, so I still have 10 more books to talk about. I'm going to try to keep these as brief because this is going on kind of long. But all of these books, all 10 of these books, I gave at least 4 stars to. Well, most of these books are 4.5 and 5 stars, so I really did have a stellar month. Just a few DNFs and a couple of like bad and mediocre books, but now we're going to get into some good stuff here. First one I have to talk about is a George R. Martin reread. Pretty good collection of his, one of his earlier ones. It's called Songs of Stars and Shadows. And this one I'd give 4 stars to. This does have some of my all-time favorite George R. Martin short stories and novellas in here. You've got This Tower of Ashes, Men of Greywater Station, The Lonely Songs of Lauren Dorr, For a Single Yesterday, and 7 Times Never Kill Man. So it's got really great, iconic George R. R. Martin sci-fi stories, The reason I give it 4 stars is because it has probably 2 of my least favorite of his stories. Like, they're good, but they're not quite on par with like some of my favorites by him. But overall, very solid collection. This one's from like 1977. This isn't the best cover, by the way. I'll show you guys a better cover. And yes, I have 2 copies. Leave me alone. But this one's a much better cover. Look at this. One of my favorite sci-fi covers. But yeah, yeah, this one's much better. But anyway, solid collection. Gave it 4 stars. We've also got Full Dark No Stars, which I gave 4.5 stars on a reread. This was our August pick for the Stephen King Book Club, run by myself and Ian from Ian the Reader. This is our pick for August, and glad to say that pretty much everybody who read this book with us over on the Book Astronomer Discord, link down below for that, really enjoyed it, gave it at least 3.5, 4.5 stars. I think maybe even a couple of people gave it 5 stars. It's just a really solid novella collection from him. I do have a dedicated book review for this, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. I go into detail about why this is one of my favorite novella collections. It's definitely in my top 20 Stephen King books if I were to rank all of them, which I have. I think I put it in the top 20, but yeah, just really stellar collection. Really dark, you know, for Full Dark No Stars, title makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's just really great. 4.5 stars. The only reason it doesn't get 5 stars is because one of the stories, Big Driver, is a little hard to reread because it is kind of a rape revenge tale, which isn't one of my favorite horror tropes. But it's still really good nonetheless. It just doesn't get the full 5-star treatment for that. But yeah, still very solid collection. Another book I gave 4.5 stars to would be The Widow's House by Daniel Abraham. This is book 4 in Dagger and Coin. And man, this book was excellent. It just gets bumped down half a star because there was kind of one thing that I was looking forward to in this book, and we don't get to see it as often as I wanted to see it. Can't go into that for spoiler reasons, but if you read the book, you probably might know what I'm talking about. Anyway, this book was stellar. You read this series mainly for the characters, I think. It doesn't really have that much plot going on, but the characters in here, I should say, are very unique, very well grounded. You know their motivations, you know what makes them tick. Like, just very stellar character work. And I'm really excited to check out book 5 in September. The Spider's War. Yeah, The Widow's House was excellent, and it makes me super excited to finish the series in September. Next book I have to talk about is book 5 in Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is The Butcher's Masquerade. And this book was awesome. I think this is on par with book 1, which is still so far my favorite in the series. I just tend to like book 1s more than other people, I think. But books 2, 3, and 4 were all pretty good, but I think book 5 is kind of stepping up the game. Even though it's the longest book in the series so far, it's very well paced, very well action-packed, and this one is probably the funniest one since book 1. Like, this book just has it all. Very excellent, and hopefully book 6, The Bedlam Bride, will continue that trajectory. But book 5, 4.5 stars, was excellent. And then we have quite possibly one of the most depressing works of fiction that I've ever read, and almost brought me to tears at one point. Thanks a lot, Ian. The River is Waiting by Wally Lamb. This book, I was not prepared for how this book was going to make me feel. This book brought up a lot of stuff. Oh God, this book was just depressing. It was depressing. And I give this book 4.5 stars, and it probably deserves 5 stars. There's 2 reasons I don't give it 5 stars. One, I didn't love the ending, and it's not a perfect book in that sense. Now, did it deserve a different ending? Probably not. And it's really hard to talk about without spoiling it, but I didn't love the ending. And also, I try to only give 5 stars to books that I know I'm going to reread. And this is a book I know I'm never going to reread. Not because it's not excellent, but because it's so goddamn depressing. This book, I haven't even said what the book is about. It's basically a guy, you know what, it's hard because you don't even want to spoil the start of the book because it's just so impactful. But basically, something happens to this guy, and there's consequences for that. And then throughout the whole book, you're kind of dealing with the consequences of this one moment in life. And I know that was so vague, but this book, it's excellent. I highly recommend this book to someone who just wants to go on an emotional journey. But goddamn, be prepared to cry during this book, because this book was just crazy. It was something else. I will not be rereading this book, but I will be trying to read more Wally Lamb. Probably try to talk to Ian, see what other books are great by him. But goddamn, this book was sad, sad and depressing. All right, so now we're on to the 5-star reads, and I had 5 of them, but I will say 2 of them were rereads. But that still leaves 3 brand new 5-star favorites, which is excellent. If I can get 1 5-star read in 1 month, that's excellent. 2 is amazing, but 3 is just on another level. So very happy for that. I'm going to go ahead and start with the 2 rereads because, I think it's more exciting to find new 5-star rereads. And yeah, my favorite author of all time, if you didn't already know, is George R. R. Martin. And I've decided to go back and reread all of his stuff. This, like I mentioned, Ian, it's all his fault. Because he was on a YouTube channel video where they were discussing Tough Voyaging by George R. R. Martin, which was one of my favorites. And that just got me really interested to go back and reading all of his stuff because it's just been too long. So with all that being said, I did reread a lot from him. I already mentioned Songs of Stars and Shadows, but I reread A Song for Leah, which is his very first short story collection, which is 5 stars, one of my all-time favorite collections. It has, again, some of my all-time favorite short stories and novellas. Probably my 2 favorite short stories that George has ever written, and just some of my all-time favorite short stories from any author, with Morning Comes Mistfall and The Second Kind of Loneliness. Like, those stories in and of themselves are just fantastic. But you've also got stuff like Override, Dark, Dark Were the Tunnels, The Hero, The Exit to San Brita, Slideshow, and then the title novella, A Song for Leah, which is just one of the best things he's ever written. But yeah, this collection is just fantastic. Highly recommend it to anyone who wants to check out some of George's short stuff. This is an excellent place to start. Really, probably the best place is Dream Songs, which of course isn't in the video. But if you want like one of his better like collections of like stories he's written throughout his career, check out Dream Songs Volume 1. But if you want to like a condensed version, like Song for Leah has some of his best stuff. So I gave this one 5 stars. I also reread his very first published novel, which this is my 3rd time reading the book, and that would be Dying of the Light, obviously by George R. R. Martin. This was published way back in 1977, well before he even thought of A Song of Ice and Fire. And I will admit, the first time I read this book, I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was good for what it was. But the second time I read it, kind of knowing a lot more about the Thousand Worlds universe that George has written in, like he kind of has this big universe that has like tons of short stories and novellas and novels. So it's a little better on a reread. So I gave it 4 stars. The 3rd time though, it just kind of really hit home with me, like what he was trying to go for in this novel. And I ended up giving it 5 stars. And I think it's one that I will love to go back to again and again. It's interesting. It's interesting. I don't think necessarily everyone will love this book. I do think there's not really too much plot in this book. It's a lot of character development and world building. So if you're into that with sci-fi, because normally with sci-fi, I hate when authors kind of just like when they try to do like world building stuff and philosophizing and all this stuff. But George, I love the way he does it because he spins in character development, which is, I'm a big character guy, so he does it perfectly. Like, he is my favorite sci-fi writer because of that, and I think this is just a fantastic debut novel. Will it be for everybody? No, but I love it. And then we'll end the video with 3 new 5-star favorites. I'll first talk about one that I've seen the movie to, so I wasn't like too surprised by it, but I really enjoyed my time with it, and it deserved 5 stars. And that would, of course, go with Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. This is the 3rd Dennis Lehane book that I've read. Not my favorite. The first one, forgetting the name, but I'll put it over here. Fantastic book. Small Mercies. Yeah, that I remember. Small Mercies was excellent. Mystic River was pretty good. It's a 4-star book. But Shutter Island, I've seen the movie several times. One of my all-time favorites. And the book was, I don't know if it's just as good. Sometimes I like the movie better than the book, especially if I've seen it multiple times. But the book is just as good. It's the same story, and it's just perfectly well written, and I've enjoyed my time with it. Kind of a book that, like, it's probably not going to make my top 10 list at the end of the year just because it didn't really surprise me. Like, I already knew what was going to happen, but it was just really solidly written, and I enjoyed my time with it. So I gave it 5 stars. And then 2 books that I've read pretty recently in the last couple of days. These are definitely contenders to make my top 10 list at the end of the year. It'll be interesting to see if they make it or not, because I think they're on that caliber. I'll talk about the one that I just finished, like, today. That would be actually our Thrill, Chill, Kill, Pick, our Thrill, Chill, or Kill, Pick book club. Fuck, I can't say anything today. This is actually our pick for Thrill, Chill, or Kill book club for the month of September, but we got it early on Libby, so I decided to go ahead and finish it a couple of days early, and that would be The Quiet Tenant by Clémence Michelon. Stacy was trying to tell me how to pronounce it. I probably butchered it. But anyway, this book is a debut thriller from this author, and I was super excited to read this book just from, like, reading the summary of it, and it did not disappoint. I think this is one of the best debut thrillers I've ever read, and I really enjoyed the way that the character wove this story. And like I mentioned, some authors don't do second person very well. Like, I DNF'd Stephen Graham Jones' kind of second person story, but this one, the whole book isn't told in second person, but there's one perspective that is, and it kind of weirded me out at first, but it kind of made sense in a way. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I liked it. I liked it in those chapters. And this one is a thriller where you're kind of following 3 different people, and you're kind of wondering when they're all going to kind of connect. And they all kind of revolve around this one creepy guy. And I don't want to get too into spoilers, but this one, I love the structure of it. I loved the way that she wove in and out of the different perspectives, and each perspective felt very unique, and it was just very good. One of the better debut thrillers I've ever read, and I'm super excited to read more from this author, even though her other book has not been rated very well. I'll still try to give it a shot, but this one, man, The Quiet Tenant, I was super pumped for, and it did not disappoint. Loved this book. 5 stars. And then, quite possibly, my favorite book that I've read in August. And just from the cover alone, I had a good feeling I was going to really enjoy this book. But I loved this book. And that would be Tantrum by Rachel Eve Moulton. Now, just from the cover of this book alone, like, you know you're in for, like, a fun horror thing. Because it's, like, obviously a baby carriage with, like, crazy things coming out of the thing. And I went into this book kind of knowing, evil baby, let's do it. And it definitely started out that way. I won't spoil too much about it, but basically in the first scene, the mom is watching this evil baby rip off a chicken's head, which was fantastic. We got to the horror right away, and that baby is smiling and cackling and having a good time in the chicken blood. And from the very first scene, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. And this book, especially for the first half, was hilarious. The mom's POV in here, hilarious. She just, she's one of those characters that just says what's on her mind, and you get her inner monologue, and she's just furious at times and just scared, and just, this book was hilarious. It doesn't sound like it, but, like, Evil Baby really gets to me for some reason. Now, I will say there's a lot more to this book than what I expected. I did not expect the book to kind of flip a switch in the second half and kind of be very different than what I expected. But I kind of I loved it for that reason. The first half is definitely more on the freakier side and the funny side, because you're dealing with this, baby who's evil, essentially, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And then the mother has, like, a past trauma with her own mother, and you're trying to figure out what's going on with that. And then the second half hits, and something happens, and you're like, oh, we're doing something completely different. And it was, and I love when authors do that. I love when authors aren't afraid to take risks with their stories, and this is a definite risk. And probably a lot of people didn't like the direction it went in, but I really liked it, and the ending was very cathartic, and y'all know that I love cathartic endings. And this book just really worked for me. I think this is a strong contender for top 10, maybe even top 5. Like this is like for me, like thinking about my list, like it's going to be in the top 10 because this book, this horror novella was just amazing. Had a fantastic time with it and highly recommend it to anyone who wants evil babies in their life. All right, so that is my long-winded August wrap-up. I did have 16 books to talk about, so 3 DNFs, 13 books. I had like 1 2-star and then a couple of disappointments, but overall, this was a fantastic reading month. Most of the books I read were like 4.5 or 5 stars, so really solid time. I had a blast reading most of these books. A lot of fun rereads and a lot of 5-star new favorites. So I would call August a success. And of course, definitely let me know if you've read any of these books, whether you loved them, hated them, thought they were meh. Have I persuaded or dissuaded you from checking out any of these books? Comment down below and we'll chat about it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Stay subscribed for more content. I try to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I've also got Boogerstrummer Discord links down below where, like I've mentioned, tons of buddy reads and read-alongs happening all the damn time. Patreon link down below if you want to go support me there for as little as $1 a month. And my Amazon wishlist if you'd like to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.